All right. So tonight we begin our big question series where we are going to answer some big questions, and let's just talk about what that means for a second. Like questions, sometimes we in Christianity, in the church, that kind of thing, we might think that asking questions is not a good thing, right? That maybe if you ask questions, maybe you'll get answers that you don't like, or maybe that kind of thing. But part of growth, part of growing, not just in our faith, but in life in general, is asking questions, right? We have to ask questions. You're never too old or too young to ask questions. And so you may have asked some questions before where you just, you go, hey, it's like a really dumb question, and you don't know who to ask. You don't want to ask someone. And so what do? You go to Google, right? You ask, you're like, I don't want to ask a person this question, so I'm going to ask Google, right? And we Google questions all the time, do we not? Right? It can be silly, and I can't tell you how many silly, stupid questions I've asked Google, and I've probably asked Google a lot of questions multiple times, like the same ones, and I'm like, is that really the answer? And so tonight, when we're talking about questions, there might be some questions that you can't ask Google, or you could ask Google, but you might get a bunch of different answers, right? You may, and that's the thing about the internet, right? Okay, you probably don't have to spend a whole lot of time on the internet to figure out that there's different answers to the same questions, and even easy, super questions where you're like, maybe there shouldn't be a difference of opinion on this, but there is, right? So for instance, maybe you went out and you Googled, are blueberries good for you, right? And then the first thing that pops up might be 10 reasons why you need to eat the superfruit blueberries, right? And then if you Google, are blueberries bad for you, the first thing that pops up might be oh, here's why blueberries are bad for your health. And you're like, well, what is it? Are blueberries a superfruit, or are blueberries bad for your health, right? And so that's the tricky thing about Google. It almost will just tell you what you want to hear. You know what I mean? And so questions, there's some things that we go, I got a question, but I don't know if Google is going to answer my question. Or for instance, you go to YouTube or you go to TikTok and you type something in on a category, you see videos and you see things and you hear things and you're like, oh, this is information about this topic, right? But you might hear a ton of different opinions about the same question, right? And so one of the questions that I want to kind of bring up tonight, right, that is really important to our faith, right? It's pretty paramount. This is a huge question, is this. What does it mean to follow Jesus? Right? This is the first question, and you may have already been thinking about some answers to this or things that you've heard. And you go, yeah, I think I know what it means to follow Jesus, or I've heard people talk about what it means to follow Jesus. If you go onto YouTube or you go onto TikTok and you search, what does it mean to follow Jesus? You would probably find a lot of different answers, right? And not that every answer would be bad or not that every answer would be good. You'd probably get a mix, but you might, if you did this right now, you'd probably have some people that would say, well, following Jesus means you read this type of Bible, or following Jesus means you wear these type of clothes, or following Jesus means you do these particular things. Following Jesus means you say these things, or you don't say these things, or you do this, or you don't do that. Or they may say, following Jesus looks like this, or following Jesus means this. And you'll get a ton of different answers. And the thing is that when you're asking questions, right? When you have multiple possible answers, the question, that's confusing, right? So you ask a question and you're looking for answers, and the answers vary, and so that can get confusing. Sorry, I'm just pulling this over here real quick. So we're talking about how do we answer this question? What does it mean to actually follow Jesus? What does that look like? Because maybe you've been around church for a while and you've heard people talk about following Jesus, and we talk about that here in youth, right? We talk about like following Jesus and what that means, right? And we say that when you put your faith in Jesus, right? When you make him the Lord and Savior of your life, you begin to follow Jesus, right? You decided to follow Jesus. Now, what does that actually look like? And that's what we are talking about tonight. So if you have your Bibles, you can pull them up or you can look on the screen. We're going to look at a very, very short passage today found in the book of Matthew. Matthew is found in the Gospels, which is the part of the New Testament, the part of our Bibles that are about the life of Jesus, right? And so in this passage, we see Jesus, and he confronts two individuals who eventually become followers of Christ. And this is it's very short, it's 3 verses, and I want you to see what happens here. Okay? So, it says, "Now, as Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and his brother Andrew, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen." So, this is how he meets them. They're there, they're casting nets because they're fishermen. And you're like, super profound, right? It's like, here's Jesus, here's Andrew and Peter, and they're fishermen, and Jesus comes up to him. Other Gospels, which are other people's accounts of the life of Jesus, so this is from Matthew's perspective. We have 3 other Gospels in our Bible. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're right at the front of the New Testament. And different Gospels tell about this story in different ways. Some people add more details. And in Matthew here, there's not a lot to it. It's kind of like he came up to him. He said, hey, he goes, here's some fishermen, and then here's how it ends. Right? Verse 19, verse 20 says this, "And he said to them, 'Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people.'" Right? So he uses a play on words here. Some of yours may say fishers of men. Same thing, right? Men meaning men and women. This is people. So he goes, "I'll make you fisher of people." So he's using a play on words because he knows they're fishermen, and he says, "Hey, I know that what you do is you fish, and that is your job. That's your life. That's how you make your money. That's how you keep your family alive. I understand that, but here's the thing. I want to make you fisher of men. I want to make you fishers of people." Jesus is calling them to something even greater. Now, in other Gospels, like I said, there's a few more details that we see that before this, Jesus, in other Gospels, that Jesus says, hey, they had a bad luck of fishing that day, and they hadn't caught anything, and Jesus says, hey, throw your nets out again on the other side of the boat, and they catch so much fish, the boats begin to sink. And because of this, they follow Jesus because of this crazy miracle. And because they say, there's something different about this guy. So they follow him. Here, it just says, hey, he comes up to him, he knows they're fishers, says, I want to make you fishers of men. I want to put more meaning in your life than what you're doing right now. Right now, your purpose is fishing. This is way, but I want to make you not just fishermen, but I want to make you fishers of men. I want to make you fishers of people. And in verse 20, here's what it says. It says, immediately they left their nets and followed him. So they didn't hesitate. They threw down the nets and they followed Jesus. So quite literally, they became followers of Jesus. Right? They then, throughout the Gospels, this is recorded, they would go with Jesus to different towns to do different things, and they saw tons and tons of miracles. They saw Jesus heal people. They saw people gain their eyesight back. They saw Jesus walk on the water. They saw all kinds of amazing things. And when they first started following Jesus, they were probably thinking, well, we'll follow you, but what does that mean? What is it like? They're like, what does that look like 6 months from now? Like we're leaving behind everything we know and we're going to follow you. What does that mean? So one of the things I want us to see here about this is that Jesus invited them to go with him. He invited them to go where he went so that they could be more like him. Right? Jesus invited these guys, his disciples, to go with him so that they could be more like him. Okay, let me explain something. If you don't know this might be helpful. Okay, back then, many religious leaders or rabbis and teachers, right? That's what rabbi means, is teacher, had disciples. Jesus was not the only one who had disciples. This was fairly commonplace that great teachers would have disciples that would learn under them. That's what a disciple is someone who learns underneath someone else. Okay? And so when Jesus is saying, hey, come and follow me, they knew that he was inviting them to be someone that learned under him. But he's saying, hey, follow me. Not just do what I tell you to do, or here's some books to read, or if you really want to know how to be the best, whatever, here's a few tips online. He said, no. If you want your life to change, if you want to know what God is like, if you want to experience God more, follow me, is what Jesus said. Come and do the things that I do. When I'm healing people, see what's happening. When I care for people, when I love people, and I look past the sin and I see the person behind it and I have love for them. Come and see that. Right? When this is all happening, when Jesus is living life, he's saying, come, follow me and see how I live so that you can become like me. The second thing is this: he had a life in mind for them that was bigger than the life they were currently living. Right? But they were fishermen, and he said, I want to make you fishers of men. The life they were living was just a normal life. They did their work. It was not unlike many other people. Probably wasn't the most desirable thing, to be honest. But it wasn't that he goes, I'm going to elevate your status socioeconomically, which is a big way of saying, this is not to make you rich. This is not to make you more famous. This is not to make you more popular. This is not to make you anything other than this will help you to know God better. And in doing so, the better you know the Lord and what he desires for your life, the better your life will be. Now, that's the thing about Jesus. The life that he calls us to live, the best life that he calls us to live, is different than the best life that the world says. Because there's a lot of things that the world says are really great things, and this is what you pursue. And Jesus says, hey, I care about eternal things. I care about how you love people. I care about how you treat other people. I care about, are you humble? And so these are the things that God is calling us to versus the things that the world is calling us to. So he was saying, hey, come and live this life that will be better than the life you're currently living. And so the last thing I want us to see from this passage is Jesus had more in mind for their lives in the areas that mattered the most. So what this means is that the areas that really matter in your life, right? Not how much money you make, not how good you are at a particular sport, or how good you are at maybe an instrument, or how good you are at, maybe you're absolutely fantastic at science. Those are great things. But he says, these are not the things that matter most. There's things in life that matter more than the things that are temporary here on earth. There's things that are eternal. Right? How good are you at worshiping the Lord? Not that it's a contest, but he's saying, listen, come and I'll show you what God is like, and you can worship him. You can love others, right? Jesus said, people ask Jesus, what are the two greatest commandments? And he said, love God and love people. Love God and love people. These are the things that matter most. How well do you love God, and how well do you love people? And he showed them what it meant to make these things matter most by the way he lived. So, what does it mean to follow Jesus? What does it mean? It means that when we're following Jesus, we're looking more like him. To follow Jesus well means that every day we're taking the steps to look more and more like Jesus. To look more and more like the Jesus that we read about in the Gospels. And when you read about Jesus, and you read about what he did, he's so different than everyone else. He's so different. And the humility, the love, the patience that he shows. Ultimately, the forgiveness that he has for all of us, for our sins. So here's where we're going with this. If you really understand who Jesus is, it changes everything. When you really understand who Jesus is and how he was different and what he did for each one of us, it changes everything. The question, what does it really mean to follow Jesus? It means to look more and more like him. But when you start to realize what he's like, and then you start to look like him, that changes everything. We as people who, if you're in this room and if you're not a follower of Christ, you say, hey, I'm not a Christian. I've not made that decision. He's not my Lord and Savior. I'm glad you're here. And I hope that you make that decision to follow Jesus one day. But here's the deal. For those of us who already are followers of Christ, what we need to see is that every day we need to look more like him. That's how we follow him, is every day to look more like him. And when you understand what Jesus is really like, who he really is, that he is the Son of God, that he is God, that he came to be God in the flesh, that we know God because we know Jesus, when you realize that, that changes everything. Then it's not about do this, don't do this. It's not a religious practice. It's not, I got to make sure that it's no. What am I doing? How do I look different from Jesus? And then how can I be more like Jesus? So, when you understand who Jesus is, it changes everything. So here's a few quick things. Just a few quick things that you can do, some application, some takeaway to finish off our lesson here. First thing is this. Start reimagining what following Jesus looks like. If you had an idea of what following Jesus or being a Christian, however you want to put it, if you had an idea of what that looked like, if that meant like, hey, I've got to read my Bible 15 hours every week, or I have to say so many prayers, or I have to be at church 8 times a week, whatever it is, it could be anything. If you say, I got to dress a certain way, right? Or else I'm not a good Christian, or whatever it is, okay? Begin to realize, reimagine and go, following Jesus means looking more like Jesus, right? Following Jesus means looking more like Jesus. So what does that look like? How do you do that? Maybe you need to read some of the Gospels. You need to see what Jesus is like. He didn't always play well with the religious leaders. Actually, that's who he had the most issue with. Reimagine what following Jesus looks like. And it's real simple. Following Jesus looks like becoming like Jesus. Okay, so next thing is this, take a step. So one step, here's what I'm not asking you to do, okay? Okay, follow me here. I'm not asking you to say, 3 years from now I want to look like this and here's 15 steps. Okay? Some of you are that type of person. You're long-term planners, and you've got 15 big steps, and then in each step you've got 3 sub-steps, and then you've got a progress report every 6 months. Listen, some of you, you're like, stop, Marshall. Like, what are you doing? And then some of you are like, yes, I've already got my portfolio out, right? You're in the other group. It's okay. Okay, it's okay. All right, so here's the deal. Here's the deal. I'm not asking you to do that. I don't want a long-term plan. I don't want you to say, okay, to follow Jesus, here's what I want to, here's the 100 different things I want to do in 5 years. That's not what this is not what this is. That's fine. And if you were to do 100 different things from you today to look more like Jesus, that would be awesome. But here's what I'm asking. Take one step. Find one thing that you can do this week to look more like Jesus, or to begin the process to understanding what it means to look more like Jesus. So if that means, hey, you know what? Like, I haven't made youth a priority. I haven't made coming to church a priority. And so, like, here's the deal. For you go, hey, I need to know more about what it means to look like Jesus. So maybe I come to small groups. Maybe I make a commitment that small groups is something I need to come to on Sunday. Or maybe say, hey, I need to be here on Wednesdays. Or maybe you're saying, hey, I know one area of my life, one thing that I could change this week. Whether it's the way that I interact with my family, the way I talk about other people, the way that you have that habit of lying about things, right? And you say, hey, maybe it's that sin that you know that's secret in your life, no one else knows about. And you say, hey, what's that thing that doesn't look like Jesus in your life that you can take that step this week to look more like Jesus? That's the second thing. And the last thing is this. Think about these questions, okay? So, spoilers, these are questions that we're going to answer in this series. So here's the questions you can think about. First off, who am I? That's a big question, right? Some of the seventh graders in here might go, it's real simple. I'm Paul, right? No one's named Paul in here. But like, I guess there's Pastor Paul. My name is Marshall, right? So thank you. I will be, yeah, so who am I? That's a big question, right? It's not just like, I am Marshall, right? But the question is like, well, what does that mean? Like, who am I? Right? Because here's the deal. I think, and I mentioned this at our 7th grade welcome day. All right? If you were there, you'll remember this, I talked about it's really important to know your identity. That you can put your identity in so many different things, but really, who am I? What is my identity? We'll talk about that in the series. The second question is where am I? Or where do I fit, right? Like, where am I? Where do I fit? This is kind of saying, like, where do I fit in this world? Right? Where do I fit? Who are my people? Right? That kind of thing. Where do I find my community? And then the third question that you can ask is this: can I make a difference? Can I make a difference? Is there a difference that can be made? These are questions. So 3 questions. We're gonna address those in this series. These are deep questions. These are not I'm not like some kind of genius or whatever. If you're like, those are the most important questions of my life. The reasons why we chose these questions is because this is from data and studies that shows these are the 3 most important questions that teenagers your age are asking. Right? And so these aren't random questions. These are questions that you've probably asked yourself. Who am I? Where do I fit in? And how can I make a difference? All right, so to wrap this thing up, we now know that to follow Jesus means to look like him. And I hope that tonight you can begin to think about following Jesus in that way, that it means looking more like him. And here's the thing I want you to see, is Jesus has more in mind for our lives in the areas that matters most. So just like the disciples who follow him, that he had more in mind for their lives in the areas that mattered most, Jesus has more in mind for your lives in the areas that matter most. So things that are most important, the things that have an eternal significance, Jesus wants those things for you, and that's what matters. Let's go ahead and pray. Lord, thank you.